This is Glass City Humanist, a show about humanism, humanist values, by a humanist. Here is your host, Douglas Berger.
In this episode, we talk to Kevin Bolling, the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance, which is the only national organization dedicated to atheist, humanist, and other non-theist students. We discuss what the SSA is and does, and its efforts to protect real religious freedom on campuses across the country, and what the SSA is looking forward to in the future.
Glass City Humanist is an outreach project of the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, building community through compassion and reason for a better tomorrow.
With us today is Kevin Bolling. He's the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance. He served in that position since 2017. Kevin brings with him 20 years of nonprofit leadership experience. His career has included over 10 years of student association management and on-campus program development from Los Angeles to Boston. Thank you for being with us today, Kevin.
Really happy to be here.
So what is the Secular Student Alliance and what does it do?
Sure. The Secular Student Alliance, we are an educational nonprofit and really focused within the secular community. So we're one of the 19 organizations that are part of the Secular Coalition for America. But we really do focus on students. So students in middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And we provide really a place for them to form their own organizations on their specific campuses to really sort of hone their non-religious, however they define it, identity, and then to do programs on campus and really sort of live out their secular activism. So we have this year with COVID and those sorts of things has been a little different, obviously, but we typically have over 300 chapters all across the United States. Most of those are in college universities, although we continue to see an increased number of interest in high schools and even in middle schools now.
And what kind of services does the SSA National Office provide local chapters?
We really act as, I think, a big resource for the students. You feel a lot of times students are like, oh, I feel like I'm the only one on campus who's an atheist. And oftentimes, in Google searches or those sorts of things, they find us and realize there's this whole community out there that is like them. And there are lots of people like them, students like them. And so we really try to hook them up. So we can provide areas to hook them up with other people at their school if there's already a chapter there, or we help them start a chapter. And so we really look at providing lots of free services for the students. So free tabling supplies and information and resources on how to start a chapter on their campus. We have staff who work with them individually. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Why is this important to you? Okay, let's go from there. And so the chapters, because they're their own student organizations on the individual campuses, are really there to meet the needs of that population of students. And so you can imagine a chapter in North Dakota is going to be very different than a chapter in Los Angeles, just as far as what the needs are for the students, the number of people, and what their focus is going to be. So, and then we provide a bunch of services. So when they're out tabling, we provide publicity and tabling supplies so that they can really spread the word as much as possible. One, that they're on campus, raise that awareness about non-religious students, and just normalize it. We also do grants and have lots of guides for them on activities and programs they can do on their campuses. Again, we want them to form a community and a family and have friendship. We also want them to impact and affect the larger campus, and again, normalizing non-religion. And so we also, we're just actually releasing our scholarship recipients. So every summer we do have a scholarship, and we announce those in the fall and we have a very nice that we have lots of local groups who partner with us in hosting scholarships for secular activism. So that's available on our website to read about those students, some fantastic student leaders. We do a secular spring break. So oftentimes you hear about, Christian groups going on spring break. We actually do that. And we've done disaster recovery. So we've been to Puerto Rico where Hurricane the hurricane came on shore and just devastated Puerto Rico. We were rebuilding roofs for a week. We were on Great Abaco Island, where Hurricane Dorian just devastated that island. And so we're looking this year at actually going to Louisiana, where the hurricane came ashore, and doing some work there. We have a summer conference. So we always say it's the largest gathering of secular students anywhere in the United States. So every summer, campus hosts that. And we have the student leaders from all across the country come together. So a variety of resources for students individually and on chapters, as well as leadership development and those sorts of things.
Now, do you just mainly organize chapters on college campuses, or do you also do the high schools?
The main area where we have chapters is in college. And so students have had a chance to, they've left home, they're a bit on their own, they're experiencing other people, they're realizing what they were taught is not necessarily what a lot of other people believe. And so it's also a crucial time in just student development theory, where students start to question what they were grown up with and start forming their own morals and values. So as you can imagine, that's an integral time for us to be there and be supportive and involved and to help them with that. But as I mentioned, we are finding more and more high school students who are interested, and even starting in middle schools. And clearly with that, there's a degree of parental involvement that needs to be there to make that a bit more successful. But we continue to see that growing, and we have resources for them as well. We have a 15 week semester guide for high schools and middle school students on things that they can do. And it's different videos and readings and discussions and those sorts of things for their meetings. So we provide a lot of resources. But yeah, the primary focus is in college and universities. And still 80% of our students come from religious households. So a lot of our students, this is their first time being with people who are, in mass with people who are non-religious.
And have you found it harder to organize chapters in colleges or in high schools? I would think in high schools it'd be a lot harder.
High schools it is. And again, there's a different process for starting student organizations in high schools, which sometimes can take a year. And again, having that parental support is important. And so if we have parents who are accepting or who are non-religious, then clearly that's a lot easier and the student has a lot of support. But again, the vast majority of our students come from religious households, and even in college aren't out as non-religious to their families or communities. So that's why we see a lot of what we're doing happening in colleges and universities.
And besides having meetings and some other campus activities, what else do chapters do to represent free thought on campus?
It's really open to them to a variety of things that they want to do. A lot of our student organizations, we host a variety of national programming: Ask an Atheist Day, Darwin Day, Carl Sagan Day, different days of community service. So they can participate in all of those things on their individual campuses. They will do community service projects, either as a group themselves or with other groups on the campus. They typically will sponsor a little bit, as programs on their campus with faculty and staff, lectures, discussions, debates. They do a lot of interfaith work. Our chapter in Missouri actually used to host the interfaith panel on campus. They weren't invited in the beginning, so they just said, fine, we're going to host it. And they invited everybody. Our perspective needs to be heard. So that same year, they actually wound up winning, or I guess earning, Campus Organization of the Year. For all that they were doing. So super active on campus and doing those sorts of things. So it's really whatever they want to do. But we focus on education, service, and then sort of social activities as well as activism.
And about how many chapters are there currently in the organization?
We're just coming out of the pandemic right now. So we're about 200 chapters. So typically that's a bit larger. We expect in next winter and spring semester that we'll get rolling again and getting those chapters back up to having several hundred across the United States.
And are they more prevalent in the Bible Belt or in the Northeast, or is there a particular area that has them?
Yeah, we do find a little bit in areas where there's a larger concentration of majority religion. So the South, the Midwest, Utah. So we find a large component of students who are seeking out other people like them and ways to sort of live out their secular activism. So that's a bit of a draw in those veins. But we have chapters in New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago and big cities as well. So a lot of times a little bit of the programming that they're doing is different just based on the needs of what the students are.
When I interviewed August Brunsman, the first SSA executive director last fall, he likened to SSA chapters to organizing people at a bus stop because chapters can turn over so much when the leadership graduates. Do you agree that that can be a struggle baked into the concept of the SSA?
I think that's a struggle for any student organization. So, SSA isn't immune to that by any stretch of the imagination. And sort of digging into our own data, we realized that, clearly year one is super important. So when a student reaches out to us and says, hey, I want to start a chapter, our response needs to be almost immediate with them. And so when they're interested and energized about really moving forward with them and doing that as quickly as we possible, and so we oftentimes can get them, get the student organization, meeting all of our criteria within a week, and most of the time active on their campus within 2 weeks. Sometimes there's a meeting that they have to do with student organizations for the policies, and that may come a little bit later. But our goal is 2 weeks and getting them up and active. I mean, we find the most success in that. Then first year, clearly that first year of transition is important to from one year to the other. So we really reach out and do some extra work with the students. Year 3 tends to be when the vast majority of people graduate. And so that's our huge leadership transition. And so we know that that's about that year. We're working with the leadership all the time on transition and who are the next leadership. So by doing all those things, we help reduce that, which is good. And so, each step along the way increases the longevity of the organization, the impact that it has not only for the students, but the campus and the local community.
For more information about the topics in this episode, including links used, please visit the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show.
Now, sometimes the motivation for forming these chapters on campus is to address any bigotry coming from the majority religions that they may have experienced on campus. Do you happen to have any examples of people, free thought students, having issues with the majority religions?
More and more, our chapters have some interesting and fun and collaborative partnerships with religious organizations, which is nice. So we had actually one group at Clarion University who there was more the conservative Christian students and groups were ripping down paperwork and their flyers and writing stuff. They would chalk on the sidewalks and they'd write rather nasty things next to it, and we're just really sort of harassing our students. So our students actually went to the campus, the student government, and made an official complaint. The Christian group came in and said, no, they're the ones that are actually harassing us, which was not true. The interesting thing is that Clarion Group had a great relationship with Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, who came in and were witnessed for our students going, no, the SSA are the cool guys. They're good. It's the other Christians that are not. So there are situations like that. We see things that are happening on campuses. I would say by far we see that we were seeing a decrease in that. And I think sort of lately there's been, and really sort of building up in the Trump years, this permission to vocally chastise and harass people. So we did see where religious students would come in, not only our organizations, but LGBT groups come in and try to disrupt the group, just physically coming in the meeting rooms and those sorts of things, which is just annoying. So we've had things where we've had programs and Christian students have tried to stop that. But I would say for the most part, that's becoming less and less as more and more students become non-religious. But I think American Atheists did they did their secular survey, and with that they did a youth component. So there's an entire youth report with American Atheists that we co-launched with them. It's available on their website. And it actually talks about the increased discrimination, even with the growing number of students becoming non-religious. And this generation could be a tipping point where it's majority non-religious rather than majority religious. But they're facing increased harassment and rejection. Harassment from campus and even in employment and those sort of things, and rejection from family and community. So unfortunately, that's not going in the right direction, as a holistic country. But fortunately, we and our students being organized, and I think the support that they have, and if there is a problem with administration, FFRF is always right there with a lawyer to give them a call, which is fantastic. So we've been fairly good, but clearly there continue to be problems across campus.
The SSA has participated in some religious freedom lawsuits over the years. The most recent one was suing the Department of Education over the Trump administration rule that would exempt religious student groups from colleges' non-discrimination rules. In August, the Department of Education signaled it would rescind the rule. Has that happened yet, and do you expect it to happen soon?
It hasn't yet happened yet, and they were examining the ability to rescind. Do we think that's going to be rescinded? Yes, and it hasn't happened yet. We're working with clearly American Atheist and American United Against the Separation of State and Church. So they are great advocates for us in moving that forward and keeping an eye on that. I would suspect that would be resolved fairly soon.
The non-discrimination rules for student groups can be found on most college campuses. It comes from federal law that apply to programs and activities that receive funds from the U.S. Department of Education. If someone who professes to believe in a God, who is maybe an evangelical Christian, would they be accepted for membership in an SSA chapter?
We have a lot of members in SSA who are religious. So we have religious students, we have students who are like, I'm not sure. And then we clearly have, your humanists and your firebrand atheists. So we have the spectrum. And part of our policies with the student organizations is we believe in diversity and inclusion. So if a religious student became a member and wanted to run for office, that is fine. They might not be voted in from the other students, but that's part of the process, as any student who wants to run wouldn't be voted in. But we do believe in inclusion. And I, going back to the lawsuit, I think one of the important points is to make is we don't believe any student organization should be allowed to discriminate. So, but student organizations can, if they don't receive, unfortunately, if they don't receive student funds. So you can say not everyone can be a member, but then you also forfeit your right to have student funds. So the money that everyone contributes in so that the students can do things on campus. So this is Christian students asking to be able to discriminate, against non-religious people, against minority religions, and against LGBT people, and get public funds. And so we think the discrimination part is just wrong. We really think the getting public funds part is just completely wrong. So, and that's, I think, why we went to get, American Atheist and American United went in and are doing this lawsuit.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's important. And some people would make that argument that, well, SSA wouldn't accept a believer. But I know in my humanist groups, we've always had people that were nominally believers, and we never discriminated against them. And I think it shows how inclusive our way of life, our philosophy really is.
Definitely. And part of it's an interesting thing. A lot of the religious students are members of our group because they can have conversations about religion that they can't with their religious group. So one, our students typically tend to be super knowledgeable about religions in general. So they're all about having a conversation about it. but to express doubt or even go, let's just talk about some of these basic principles and do they hold weight or not? Or, is what so-and-so said representative of how we believe as a group? That oftentimes isn't a welcome place to have in a religious community or a church or even in a student group. So the fact that we provide a welcoming and safe place for religious students to talk about their own religion, I think is great.
Do you like what you hear? Would you like to support the show so we can make it better? You can write a review for podcast apps that allow reviews. You can share our website, glasscityhumanist.show, with your friends, and you can donate to the show using the donate link on the website. Any support is appreciated.
The Secular Student Alliance recently passed 20 years of existence. What do you see happening in the near future or even later? What do you have any big plans or things coming up or?
Our board of action, the director, we were actually going to be right when COVID started. We were about to start the project of our strategic plan. We turned sort of 180 and did a COVID year plan. Okay, these are our assumptions about what's going to happen this sort of next year. Now 19 months, and so we're actually beginning that process again. But we're really looking at one, how are we meeting the needs of the students on campus as they continue to grow and change? How are we meeting those sort of needs to be responsive and to be proactive and really meeting the needs of the changing environment? When, as I sort of mentioned before, we have almost 50% of students now are non-religious. So what does that mean? We still focus, a big part of the students who are interested in us is that smaller segment that identifies as atheist or humanist or agnostic. So I think we're going to be really looking at what are we doing with that larger component who are, I don't know, or I'm just non-religious, or I'm a nun, and helping them build community and identity. I think they're clearly part of our family, just don't have a bit of that identification. So how do we do that? And then really looking at sort of outside partnerships. We are fortunate to have a great family within the secular community and other organizations who we work all the time with and have great partnerships in. And I think one of our big things is looking at, there are lots of students who probably believe in the separation of church and state very much the way we do, and religious freedom in the way we do, who aren't allied within this community. So how are we reaching out to them and providing resources and education and skills to them, which I think will really take our organization in a really sort of big and new sort of direction.
Now, I noticed in reading the mission statement for the group, the last part of it is set a course for lifelong activism. What does that entail? What would a student get in learning how to become a lifelong activist?
And I think one of the things we'll often hear from students is, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God. Great. That tells me so little about you. So it's one minute component about you. So our thing is, okay, you're on this planet, you've got one life. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to make the world a better place for you and for others before you go? And so we really look at doing sort of leadership developments. And again, a quarter of our programming is really focused on activism. So if we have students going to state capitals and testifying against, religious, quote unquote, freedom, it's really religious discrimination acts or anti-LGBT acts or those sorts of things, that's part of activism. If they're going and lobbying, their representatives in Washington, that's activism. If they're doing programs to elevate normalize atheism on campus, that's activism. They're also passionate about a variety of other topics. So LGBT rights, women's reproductive health, environmentalism, climate change, racial justice, whatever they're interested in, we want them to know part of being on this planet and being a good person is making this world a better place before you go. And so that means you need to create change in a positive direction. So we want to encourage that as much as we can. So, and that's part of our secular spring break, our scholarships, our conference are all huge components of just reinforcing that message, in addition to what we're doing, on campus with them throughout the year.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's exactly, that's the kind of group that I would probably be a part of. Excuse me. That would probably be a group I would be a part of if I was still in college. I kind of missed it.
Yeah. And I think more and more we're seeing younger people are wanting activities, are wanting experiences. So if you're doing a beach cleanup or a river cleanup, that's our students have organized those sorts of things. They collected food for the homeless and pet adoption, and they're doing stuff. And then and again, we had a group in I think it was Missouri off the top of my head, when there was the drag queen story hours in public libraries, and one of the groups was protesting. They were like, "This is nuts!" And so we sent them a huge banner, and they were part of a public march to the library in support of that. So they're getting out there, being visible, not only as secular atheists, separation of church people, but also as whatever else they're passionate about.
If there is a student listening to this episode who is interested in starting an SSA chapter at their school, what would they need to do first?
The easiest thing to do is go to our website, and they can click on their Start a Chapter. So that brings them to a quick little form. They fill out, so we've got just a tad bit of information on them. And within 24 hours, one of our campus organizers will reach out to them. So it's the I think easiest way, or they just send us an email at ssa@secularstudents.org. And again, we can hook them up. We do have a map on our website so that students can go and look to see if there is a chapter at their school already or near them. And really, if there are students at one campus, we will do our best to sort of link them up as we're aware of those sorts of things. But yeah, and our staff is there to sort of help them through the entire process. We've got tons of free resources for them. So we try to make that as quick and easy for the students as possible.
All right. And as we close this interview, was there anything else that you wanted to promote or that you wanted our listeners to know about the SSA? Maybe reiterate a point that you made earlier?
Sure. I think one thing we're just in the process of launching our scholarship recipients. So please go to our website and just look at the students. You will be very comforted by the next generation of activists that are coming up and what they're doing. I used to think that I was super busy because I was super involved when I was in college. And so I look at what some of the students are doing, and I was like, "You've started your own nonprofit while in college." What they're doing is amazing. So if you really want to uplift and really positive of what the future is, check that out. And I think and if there are local groups out there, we are constantly looking, inviting local groups to sponsor scholarships. One, you help identify secular students, non-religious students in your area, and just energizing that is a great way to support other students. And again, I think for anyone who is interested in supporting students in general, you can please go to our website, secularstudents.org, and donate. So that's always a way to help us, help students and the next generation of the secular community.
All right, Kevin. Well, I really thank you for your time. I really love the SSA, and like I said, I would be a member if I was still in college because I did. I've liked it for 20 years now. I've liked that group. They're really doing some good things, and I appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you. It's always great to talk with other people in the movement.
Thank you for listening. For information about the topics in this episode, please visit the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show. Glass City Humanist is an outreach of the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie and is supported in part by a grant by the American Humanist Association. The AHA can be reached at americanhumanist.org. Sholey can be reached at humanistswle.org. Glass City Humanist is hosted, written, and produced by Douglas Berger, and he is solely responsible for the content. Our theme music is Glass City Jam, composed using the Amplify Studio. See you next time.